many bodybuilders who compete, well, actually, most bodybuilders, fitness people, and others involved in any kind of bodybuilding activity usually follow stringent diets in order to reduce body fat as low as possible. There's various diets. I'm not going to get into all of them here. Low carbohydrate diets, just reducing overall caloric diets. Anyway, it's really tough. I know when I competed in bodybuilding in the 70s, I can tell you that the hardest part of getting ready for a contest, or the most odious to me personally, was dieting. I used a very low carbohydrate diet. I talk about exactly what I did in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. I didn't use any steroids. I got very good results. You can read all about it in Applied Metabolics. However, there is a problem with dieting. It sometimes, depending on your starting level of body fat, a dieting period for in preparation for a contest could be anywhere from 6 months to as little as 2 months. To some people who are really lucky with high metabolisms and low body fat, it could be as little as a month. Myself, I usually dieted for about 3 months before a contest. And again, I went on a very strict diet. I controlled both carbohydrates and calories. I lost a lot of body fat. But there's a problem with these contest diets. And what happens is, after you've been dieting for weeks, months, whatever, the contest ends and you just have this desire to eat and binge. You just want to stuff your face. I remember when I wrote for the bodybuilding magazines. I was the science editor of Joe Weider's Muscle and Fitness magazine for a decade, 10 years. I was also a associate editor or editor at large is my exact title, at the now defunct Flex magazine. And I wrote for Iron Man for 28 years. And I used to talk to, it was kind of funny, I would see a lot of the bodybuilders who won contests back in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s. They'd show up at, let's say, Gold's Gym to take photos after the contest for the magazines. And this sometimes was maybe 5 days to a week after the contest. And they'd show up in the gym looking nothing like they did at the contest. A lot of them were bloated and smooth. The tremendous vascularity and veins that stood out when they competed were gone. There was nothing there. They looked like Michelin men. And the photographers used to pull the hair out if they had hair on their head. Some of them had no hair to pull out. But anyway, the point is, it was very frustrating. A lot of these bodybuilders, what happened was, when you prepare for a contest, you get very dehydrated. Some people use pharmaceutical diuretics. Others just use other measures to control water, because the less water you hold under the skin, subcutaneous, the more muscular you're going to look, the more muscle definition you're going to have. Of course, you can do overkill and wind up digging into the muscle water. Your muscles are 72% water. If you don't do it right, you could wind up flat and smooth. That's another story. But anyway, they get real dehydrated for the contest. After the contest, they start loading up on food, loading up on sodium. Their body starts to retain water like you wouldn't believe. This is what accounts for the bloated look that happens so fast in many bodies after a contest. Now, this has been thought about by people who are in, let's say, the science aspect of bodybuilding. And what they came up with was a technique called reverse dieting. And reverse dieting is just as it sounds. It's popular among bodybuilders and competitive athletes who want to increase their energy levels while maintaining weight loss. Because instead of like binging out and eating like a slob, what reverse dieting actually entails is slowly adding a little bit of calories each day back into the diet. This kind of gives you a subtle energy boost. It kind of relieves some of the hunger, but you're not overeating, so you don't get that bloated fat look. It's a way of slowly getting back to a normal diet. You can say it's kind of like a bridge between contest dieting and normal dieting. Reverse dieting is it's an eating plan that, again, gradually involves increasing your caloric intake over a period of several weeks or months to boost your metabolism and help your body burn more calories throughout the day. Like I said, it usually follows a caloric restricted diet or some other kind. The claims about it are, again, it can boost energy levels, reduce hunger, and it can help break through weight loss plateaus. You can actually, as I wrote an article in my Applied Metabolics newsletter recently. It's on intermittent dieting, which basically involves taking breaks while you're actually dieting, where, let's say, you're on a strict diet. You might go off the diet for a week or two and just add more calories. This adjusts your metabolism upward so you don't get this consistently low metabolism that results from constant dieting. And, in the long run, you wind up getting better results than if you did just straight dieting right through. Because when you diet, again, when you reduce calories, carbohydrates really low, you get these dieting plateaus. Your metabolism goes down to nothing. It gets harder and harder to reduce body fat. The intermittent dieting helps. But this break that occurs with intermittent dieting, like I say, a week or two of just going off the diet, not going crazy, just eating a little bit more food for about 1 or 2 weeks, that actually is reverse dieting. So it can be done right after you follow a strict diet for months as a contest diet, or it can be done while you're actually dieting. It's not for everybody. I know that when I compete in contests, I went off my diet. I called it a junk day, 1 or 2 days a week. I found that it did not affect my fat loss, but it did replace my muscle glycogen, which was depleted, allowed me to train harder, and allowed me to help maintain some muscle mass because it stimulated insulin. I had a lot more carbs on my so-called junk days. Personally, I think going off the diet for as long as a week or two, I don't think it would have worked for me because it would have really slowed down my fat loss. But then again, I've never had a high metabolism. It might work for other people. There's an insulin problem too. I've always had problems with resting insulin levels. For me to load up in carbohydrates for a week or two, that would have been disastrous for me for a contest. It just wouldn't have worked, but it does work for a lot of people. Now, most diets involve decreasing caloric intake to create a calorie deficit. No matter what you hear, I don't care what's low carbs, low fat, you got to reduce calories to lose fat. In other words, you're consuming fewer calories than you're burning through activity. But over time, as I said, your body starts to adopt slowing down your metabolism in an effort to conserve energy and lean mass. Because if your calories get too low, you're going to start to cannibalize or break down muscle protein, which is the amino acids. The protein in muscles converted to amino acids, travels to the liver, where the amino acids are converted into glucose in a process called gluconeogenesis. You don't want that to happen. Okay, so that alone could lead to a low resting metabolic rate. Reverse dieting specifically involves increasing caloric intake by 50 to 100 calories per week above your baseline, which is the number of calories you're currently consuming to maintain your weight. This period can last anywhere from a month to 10 weeks or until you reach your target pre-diet intake. In other words, you gradually add calories a little bit each day till you're eating about the same amount of food you were eating before you went on the strict diet. Because protein needs are typically calculated for body weight rather than caloric consumption, your protein intake can remain the same throughout the diet. So the protein's not affected. You still have a high protein intake, so that will minimize muscle loss. Increasing your calorie intake may boost metabolism and help your body burn more through something called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. I mentioned this in a previous video. NEAT involves what they call a futile cycle. Well, not a futile cycle, but you're basically burning calories because you're constantly making small little movements. You've seen these people, they're always fidgeting, their legs are moving, they talk a lot, they're always moving around. That basically burns calories. Any movement burns calories, and it's called non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Again, walking, talking, and fidgeting, that's what it means. In addition, reverse dieting may normalize levels of circulating hormones such as leptin, which regulates appetite and body weight. Now, research shows that leptin, which is produced and secreted by the fat cells in your body, it's called an adipokine. It's basically a fat cell hormone. It's a protein. It decreases in response to reduced caloric intake. When leptin levels fall, appetite is increased and calorie burning is reduced. So, in other words, by adding a little bit of calories each week, you're helping to maintain elevated leptin levels, and you're also affecting something else. You're affecting another hormone called ghrelin, which I'll get to in a second. Ghrelin and leptin have a kind of what is it called? Yin-yang relationship. In other words, leptin lowers the appetite, ghrelin raises it. Ghrelin is produced in the hours following a meal. It builds up in your, it's produced in the gut, it builds up, and it gets to the brain, it stimulates appetite, so you eat. This is what causes you to eat. Your body wants you to eat food to survive, so it kicks out ghrelin. A 6-month study in 48 people, in a 6-month study of 48 people, calorie restriction decreased leptin concentrations by 44%. And that's really tough. I mean, when the leptin levels go down, that means ghrelin's going up, and your appetite's going to go up. It's going to be really, really hard to stay on a diet. Now, the question is, does reverse dieting help with weight loss? Well, it turns out there's very little research on the effects of reverse dieting. They were developed by, like I said, a couple of scientists who also are bodybuilders who have competed in contests themselves. They thought about it. They know about how leptin and ghrelin works, so they decided that reverse dieting would help maintain a higher resting metabolism. It would help keep leptin levels high, ghrelin levels low. So they developed it. They've written about it in a couple of articles. But the truth is, there's no actual research, not even with bodybuilders or with ordinary people, but anecdotal evidence. And, if you look at the mechanism involved, it makes a lot of sense. Personally, I think it's a good idea. In other words, rather than load up and stuff your face and get fat after a contest, it's better to gradually increase the calories until you get back to your baseline calories. You'll put on very little body fat. You'll lose no muscle. You'll also control cortisol. Cortisol is a catabolic hormone that goes up after a diet. And again, a lot of it has to do with the low calories. When cortisol goes up, testosterone goes down. It creates a very bad catabolic picture. You can control this by, again, gradually adding calories, reverse dieting. Okay, increasing your caloric intake could boost calorie burning and normalize hormone levels, as I said, which promotes weight loss and maintenance. And I said calorie restriction could also reduce NEAT, the NEAT thermogenesis, as well as leptin levels. So, reverse dieting is also claimed to reduce the risk of binge eating. As I said, a lot of top bodybuilders, after dieting for months, they go into binge right after the contest. I mean, literally, as soon as the contest ends, they go have pizza, they stuff their face, they get fat real fast. A lot of it, in the immediate days after the contest, you can't really get fat that fast. There's a number of reasons why. For example, and when you binge initially, you kick out a lot more of insulin-like growth factor 1. I mean, I don't want to get into it, but let's put it this way. Most of the weight that you gain on a binge following a contest is not really fat. It's water weight from excess sodium, but you still look kind of smooth and bloated because you wind up, remember, bodybuilders who compete are usually dehydrated. So, when they start eating again, the body overcompensates and starts hoarding water. You get water retention really fast. Reverse dieting is also, as I said, a common other benefits. Reverse dieting allows you to eat more. In other words, I know it sounds crazy because why would it allow you to eat more than binge eating? But in other words, rather than going like really, really low calories after, by adding a couple of calories each day, it helps to control hunger through the mechanisms I just mentioned. Raising leptin, lowering ghrelin. It supposedly increases energy levels again because of the increased caloric intake. Now, it will help to reduce hunger, and it also can alter, like I said, several hormones that influence hunger. I mentioned the ghrelin, leptin. There was a 2008 study published in the journal Metabolism. It involved 14 male bodybuilders. It showed that 10 weeks of extreme weight loss led to a 27.7 decrease in leptin and a 26.4 increase in ghrelin 3 days prior to a competition. In other words, 3 days before the competition, they had elevated ghrelin and lowered leptin, which made it really, really hard to stay on any kind of diet. It took extreme willpower. Again, leptin promotes fullness. Ghrelin stimulates feelings of hunger. Reverse dieting can have, it's not that easy to do, though. There's a drawback because it's, you're supposed to only add like little small amounts of calories each day. They say about 50 to 100. I don't know about you, but I have to admit it's hard for me to calculate exactly how many 50 to 100 calories are. You might wind up like eating as many as 500 calories or something like that, which won't be a big deal, but it's still gonna it's not as effective as adding very small amounts, no more than maybe 100 to 150 calories a day. So that's one drawback, having to be so precise with your calorie addition, with reverse dieting. In fact, there was a study in which, shows how people can't count their calories. A study of 3,385 people showed that people typically underestimate the calorie content of a meal by up to 259 calories. That gives you an idea just how hard it is to calculate the exact number of calories, no matter what they say online with all this BS how easy. It's not so easy. I've been involved in nutrition for over 50 years. If it's not easy for me, it's not going to be easy for most people. It's hard to measure your portions. You have to measure them exactly. A lot of people don't want to bother with that. It's also time consuming. You have to track every calorie you eat. It also doesn't take into account other factors. I'm not going to get into that stuff, but there's other factors that let me talk about. There's other factors that affect, the rate of weight loss. That includes, your metabolism, the resting metabolism, your level of hunger, appetite, sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, again, it's going to raise ghrelin, lower leptin. It's going to make it very hard to do any kind of dieting, much less reverse dieting. Any kind of stress is going to increase cortisol. Again, lower leptin, raise ghrelin, make it hard to control your calories. Hormonal fluctuations. If you take a little bit too many carbs, you might overstimulate insulin. You might, the insulin, if might push, again, especially if you're insulin insensitive, the insulin might push a little bit of the calories into fat stores, or else it'll slow down the weight regain. I mean, I should say speed it up towards the fat side. You don't want that. You want to keep the fat. The whole purpose of reverse dieting is to keep fat gains to a minimum. And as I said earlier, there's a lack of research to show. There's literally no actual published research to prove the efficacy of reverse dieting. It's strictly anecdotal. But as I said, though, if you look at the mechanisms, and I mean specifically the effects on leptin and ghrelin, it makes perfect sense. And from what I've seen, quite a few of the bodybuilders, especially natural bodybuilders or bodybuilders who don't use drugs, they have used this reverse dieting technique, and they've gotten very good results from it. In other words, they wound up they're gaining very little fat after the contest. They were able to maintain pretty good condition until they gradually segued back to eating a normal diet. So that's about it, the basics of the so-called reverse dieting. You can try it. Like I say, I mean, again, they talk about 50 to 100 calories a day. I personally don't think you have to be that exact. I think the key to remember is to just add very small amounts of food back into your diet after you follow a stringent dieting program. If you do that, you can't be wrong. And as opposed to just shoveling your face with all kinds of pizza and garbage food, you will gain fat very fast, because you have to understand, after a contest, when you've reduced your body fat to very low levels, your body is kind of in a starvation state. It wants to refill those fat stores. So it's primed to gain body fat. And if you give it what it wants, which is tons of junk food, processed carbs, and all that, it's going to push those calories right into fat. So reverse dieting is a good way to avoid that. So that's about it for reverse dieting. If you want more information on nutrition, supplements that really work and supplements that don't work, anti-aging research that can, practical information you can use today, fat loss techniques that really work. There's a lot of bogus nonsense out there related to fat loss. I will explain this in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. Ergogenic aids, hormonal therapy, exercise science, women's health and fitness. All of this is covered in my Applied Metabolics newsletter, 40 to 50 pages every month, no ads, no BS. It's all evidence-based. Everything I write is based on established science. And if the science isn't there, I add my own. This is what's unique about my newsletter. I add my own 58 years of empirical knowledge. In other words, experience that I've done on myself, and having worked with many elite athletes and bodybuilders, I will relate what worked for them, because sometimes science doesn't cover everything. Sometimes you have to look at what has actually worked for others. Eventually, this will be covered by science, but who knows when. But I cover that in my newsletter now. So again, it's 40 to 50 pages every month, about the size of an ebook. It shouldn't have been called a newsletter. I should have called it something else, but it's already called a newsletter. But remember, it's solid information, no ads, written in plain English. I've been a professional writer for 43 years with 9,500 articles published. I know how to write. I make it simple. Anyone with a 6th grade education will be able to fully understand my newsletter. All science terms are fully explained. You won't have to go to a medical dictionary to figure things out, like some of these other digital publications that I've looked at, which are as thick as mud. I can't even get through them myself. They act like they're writing a PhD thesis. Horrible, horrible writing. And the reason for this is some of these guys do have PhDs. They're knowledgeable, but they are not writers. Trust me, they are terrible writers. I've seen these other publications. I mean, they would put anybody to sleep. Trust me on that one. I try and keep my newsletter lively. I have a lot of anecdotes in there about training in the old days with Arnold Schwarzenegger, those guys. A lot of great stories. I try and make it interesting. Subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. If you subscribed, I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where every day I add new information on nutrition, exercise, science, medicine, and health. That's only for subscribers of Applied Metabolics. I also have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics website. I will answer short questions submitted to me by current subscribers. I don't answer unsolicited questions. My subscribers come first. And I don't have the time to answer unsolicited questions. Speaking of that, you could put comments under these videos. You could put suggestions of future videos, but I absolutely cannot guarantee I will answer all the questions that are asked as comments under my videos. I just don't have the time. Sometimes I'll answer it, sometimes I don't. But if you're a subscriber, I guarantee I will answer your questions. Subscribers only. So that's about it. If you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, Bruno is sleeping on the couch right over here. Bruno, he's sleeping. He's a little old man. Anyway, I love this dog. Go to your local shelter and adopt a dog. They're just fantastic. Thanks for listening.